All right, back in Revelation tonight, Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter number 17, and we got the first 6 verses looking at the scarlet woman, the harlot that was riding on the scarlet beast. Tonight we'll be looking at the scarlet beast from verses 7 down through verse 18. Verses 7 through 18. We'll go ahead and read the verses. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go where? Now what does perdition mean? Right. Death or destruction. Okay. And it says, And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were, notice this key here, were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So that kind of gives you a clue there. That's a big clue as to where the headquarters will be. All right, there are 7 mountains, and we'll name them in a minute. And then it says, And the beast that was and is and not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Repeats that phrase again. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. In other words, they're not kings yet, but they will be when the Antichrist comes on the scene. Now notice their unity. Verse 13, These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto who? The beast. These shall make war with who? And that's a capital L, though, L there. So who is that? Christ. And the Lamb shall overcome them. Why? For he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and what? Faithful. We read that this morning. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdoms unto the beast. Now notice this last part, until what? And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. All right, there's another clue as to who that woman is. All right, so we now consider this beast that the harlot is sitting on. We already looked at the harlot sitting on the beast there, 1 through 6. John is amazed and perplexed at this vision. Okay, and it has to be explained to him by this angel. And notice which angel it was. It says, And the angel said unto me. Now, this angel, remember in verse 1, it says, And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me. So one of those 7 angels that dressed in priest-like garments that poured out those vials or bowls of wrath upon this earth, this is one of those, the same angel that's speaking now to John about this vision. And he told John, he says, How come you're marveling? Why are you so impressed with this beast? Or why are you so impressed with this harlot? And it amazed John that this woman had so much power on the earth. And it amazed John that she had power to ride on that beast. So it was kind of a fascinating yet terrible picture that he was looking at here. But he senses, and he's going to see this system come together. Now notice it says that this is not chronological, but notice how he is explained. It says, which was, is not, and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Now think about this. What's going to happen to the Antichrist over in chapter 19? What happens in Revelation 19? Yeah, that's the battle, right? The battle of Armageddon. They line up to make war with the Lamb. And what happens to them? The Antichrist and the false prophet. Right, they get chunked. They get the honor of being chunked into the lake of fire. All right, first. They get that dubious honor, I guess it is. All right, so they, it says right here, are going to go into perdition, which means destruction. Not just destruction, but eternal destruction. And that's more important. Most people think when something's destroyed, that's it. In eternity, if something's being destroyed, it's being destroyed for all eternity. All right? For all eternity, not just instant annihilation and that's it. No, God's going to have his wrath poured out on those sinners and that beast, that false prophet, the fallen angels, and for the rest of all eternity. And you think how long it is. Think how horrible that wrath is going to be poured out upon them. And yet, what do? These 10 kings, remember we saw over there in chapter 16, how they poured out them bowls of wrath, and most of them just shook their fist at him and blasphemed rather than repent and acknowledge God. All right, that's the condition of the world that's coming. We can see that condition right now, that men would rather blaspheme God than repent and accept God as sovereign. So we see that condition right now. So it's not a far leap or a jump in your logic to think about how this is going to happen soon and very soon. Now notice that Satan himself comes from the abyss, and this one world government that it promotes is entirely satanic. We saw the one world government, we've seen the one world church in the previous verses. This scarlet beast speaks to the one world government. So we've got two heads, the religious head and the worldly or political head. All right? The harlot is to be the head of the world church, the beast to be the head of the political kingdoms. Okay? So we see the two different ones. This explanation of the beast is started with an unusual statement. It says, "Here is the mind which hath wisdom," which means it's kind of hard to understand. You have to study the scriptures out and see this wisdom in the scriptures, be given that knowledge from the Lord about these beasts, about these two separate creatures and the path that they're on. So the angel describes the beast's 7 heads. Look at that. It said this beast has 7 heads. Now what does the number 7 represent? Completion or perfection. Now in this case it would be perfectly evil. All right? But now those 7 heads are symbolic. Okay? They're symbolic of the 7 mountains that the city of Rome sits upon. Now here's the names of those mountains. You want to write them down. Here's the names of those 7 hills that form the city of Rome. Okay? Palatine, P-A-L-A-T-I-N-E, Palatine. Next one is Aventine, A-V-E-N-T-I-N-E, Aventine. Next one is Caelian, C-A-E-L-I-A-N. C-A-E-L-I-A-N. That was kind of weird. Caelian. Or Celian. You could say Celian, I guess. All right. Next one is Esquiline. E-S-Q-U-I-L-I-N-E. E-S-Q-U-I-L-I-N-E. Esquiline. Next one is Viminal. V-I-M-I-N-A-L. The next one is Quirinal. 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 Then one more. And Capitoline. 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 Those are the 7 hills that make up the city of Rome. Thus, we can take this passage to mean that the seat of the religious power, the ecclesiastical power, will be in Rome rather than Babylon. Now, Babylon will be the seat of power for the Antichrist and his world government, and Rome will be the seat of the false prophet and the world church at that time, this ecclesiastical system. All right? The 5 fallen, notice there are 5 fallen. It says in verse number, where did I see that? 10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. Okay? The 5 fallen. Think of the fallen empires there that we have on our chart from the book of Daniel. All right? Let me get you that. Okay. What's this one representing? Anybody remember? The head. Babylon. Right? The Babylonians. Okay? The Babylonian Empire. All right? Who's next?
Roman Empire.
Know who conquered Babylon?
Syria.
Nope. The Persians, the Medo-Persians. Okay? The next one, the torso.
Syria.
No, who conquered the Persians? Greece. Okay? Greece. All right? And then we have Assyria and Egypt, the other two which are fallen. One of them, which is the final one, still is, and that is Rome. Okay? Rome conquered Greece. So you have Babylon, you have Medo-Persia, you have Rome, and right now Rome, if you remember, has the 10 toes. Anybody remember those 10 toes? Okay, those 10 toes speak to those 10 kings that we're reading about here in Revelation 19, that we read here in chapter number 17. It says these 10 kings give the beast all their power. In other words, they're totally given over. Whatever the Antichrist says, that's what they go with. Okay, so these 5 that have fallen represent the great world powers that have already passed by, and yet one still is, and that's Rome. Okay, the one that still is. So the revived Roman Empire, which will be in sway immediately after the church is raptured, is indicated by the 7th head, while the beast described in verse 11 as the 8th is the world empire, which Christ will destroy when he comes back. This world empire will be destroyed at the battle of Armageddon. All right? Now notice that the harlot is riding the beast. So what does that mean? What does that show you? If she's riding the beast. Right? She uses the beast to accomplish what she will. All right? And I think it's a mutual thing. They both are using each other for the purposes of world domination. But it also tells us that there's a confederacy here between the ecclesiastical and the political, all right? That they both are supporting each other. And you'll find out what happens when the headquarters of Babylon in chapter 18 is destroyed. Remember what happens? The false prophet and the Antichrist move where? Where do they move to? Right, Jerusalem. They move to Jerusalem, and they set up shop in the temple that's built during that period of time, and he moves his throne, the Antichrist moves his throne into the Holy of Holies, says he's God, demands to be worshipped as God, and the false prophet has everybody worship him rather than the one world church. Okay, so there's a lot to this, but if you look at it simply, what you see is this passage of things that are going to be set up. What you see is this conglomeration of wickedness in total control during this 7 years. Yet they're not in control. God's still in control. They're going to rule and reign. They're still going to have problems, though. There's still going to be some kingdoms that don't give themselves over to the Antichrist and the false prophet. They actually fight against the Antichrist, and actually that's how it's said that he's like one that has been killed and is still alive, which refers to his defeat here in chapter number 8, where he's defeated. His headquarters is destroyed, and boom, he moves over to Jerusalem into the temple and demands to be worshipped as God. So the situation described here is one of great political power on the part of the beast, but a sharing rule with the woman who controls the multitudes of the world. All right? Notice it says there's 10 horns on that beast. It says verse 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdoms as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. In other words, their time is limited to this 7 years in which they will give their whole kingdoms over to the control of the Antichrist. They do whatever he tells them to do. And they do it with one mind, with one accord, and with one strength, it says. Everything they've got is his. And they're swearing allegiance to him. They take his mark, and they'll follow and do whatever it is that he says for them to do. Now, look, here's an interesting part. Look at verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate who? And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Now what happens, it talks about the destruction of the one world church. Okay? It says they're going to strip her of all that she's got and eat her flesh. In other words, they're going to consume her. There'll be no more one world church. Okay? That's when it changes over into a worship of the Antichrist, which is his plan all along, that people haven't seen until then, that they take the one world church, completely take everything from it, and put all those assets into the worship of the Antichrist. All right, so these 10 horns give all their power, and they turn upon this. So that's a disposal of the religions of the world for one religion, and that is the worship of the Antichrist during that last 3.5 years. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Notice that phrase, there's a clue there. Who exercises control over the kings of this earth? Especially in the olden times, from the time of Constantine forward, who was controlling these kings and setting up kings and taking down kings? Well, God, yes, but there's another person that had more influence on the kings than you think. Who would it be? Who had the power of excommunication? Right, the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope. He instated and dismissed kings at his will. Okay, with the threat of excommunication. And that meant that if you weren't in the church of the Catholic Church, you were a heretic. You weren't allowed to be buried with your families in the church cemeteries, and they could have no fellowship with you, and people weren't supposed to buy, sell, or trade with you. You were thoroughly cut off, and kings feared that. Because if they got cut off, where's all that money going to go? Somebody else. Where's all that power going to go? Somebody else. So most of them towed the line right up until the time of the Reformation time, when King James and some of the others began to say, well, I think I'm going to make my own religion. And they did, the Anglican Church. was formed in rebellion against the Pope's authority. Okay? But the Pope had absolute sway over most of the kingdoms on this earth. And that's a clue here. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which would be Rome, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Rome had a lot of power over the kings of this earth. So there's you another clue as to the location of the headquarters of the world religious system. Now, some believe, and we've seen some things going on behind the scenes nowadays. You see that the Pope is having some consultations and collective councils with not just Christians, but with the Jews and with the Muslims. And they've actually sent up 3 churches all in one circle. There's 3 of them already built, and they're going to try, they think that this is how they're going to do that one in Jerusalem, how they're going to be able to rebuild the temple, is they're going to, in that temple, they're going to have 3 specific places of worship. The Muslims in one, the Christians in another, and the Jews in another. And that's how he thinks that, the world thinks that that's going to come together. So you can see things shaping up. Ralph Sexton was talking about seeing that place that they built that has the 3 things in it. And it's already being done. It's already been built. And another one is being built as we speak. And then we'll see that one in Jerusalem actually comes into being during this time of the tribulation period. All right, next week we'll look at the desolation or destruction of mystical Babylon, which means that world church is going to be destroyed. The world government is going to go through some shakeups, and the devil, the Antichrist, is going to move his throne into the Holy of Holies in that Jewish temple that's built during that time, and he's going to demand to be worshipped as God. So we'll look at the destruction of Babylon. All right, we'll stop there. Let's all stand. We'll close with a word of prayer.